Hello, welcome back. Okay, so we're going to get ready to start the playthrough. One important thing before we start is when you're looking at the rules, this is really the index. It's not super helpful, but one thing I wanted to point out is like in the beginning, they almost have like an index here. So it's like a vocabulary thing where they explain like what all the key words and what they mean. And then what he does that's really cool is in some places he'll say where in the rule book you can learn more. And so this is almost like an index. So that's the one cool thing I wanted to point out. The rules seem to be very straightforward. I find myself falling asleep reading them because GMT rule books are dry to me. They're not, I don't know, they're just not laid out in an exciting fashion. I wish GMT rulebooks had more screenshots or pictures and examples, and they never ever do. And I think that's part of the reason why I fall asleep a lot. But this is, like I said in the beginning, this game has a lot of steps. So there is opportunity for us to screw things up. But I don't think it's a hard game to understand. It's a really abstract game, and that's I think what's weird is like when you're looking at it, you're like, well, what's all this mean? It's a very abstract game in some ways. So this game reminds me of Cruel Necessity. Cruel Necessity or any State of Siege type game, it has a lot of that in it, but please don't get me wrong. This game is a State of Siege game on steroids. There's a lot more, and I'm quite impressed by what this guy does. He has a lot of moving parts. And so hopefully you'll be impressed too as we get started. Now, before you start, you always have to read your cards. The one advantage here is that you always start every game with these 3 cards. So after you've played several times, this might become second nature. But these are cards that either they change the rules while they're in play, right? Or you can acquire them and then you can get some extra actions that are unique to the card. Or, yeah, this is another while in play. So let's read these real quick. So while in play, after completing a player action, if there are 3 or more ravaged counters on a tribe, remove that tribe from play and return the ravaged counters to stock. Okay, so that's a way to destroy tribes and remove them from the map is we got to put 3 ravaged counters on it. Now, during setup, I was telling you I was contemplating taking this Warfare card. What this Warfare card does is I can spend movement points to add extra Ravage counter to a tribe. So you see how there was a synergy there? So I knew about this card, and I haven't revealed it yet, but what's our victory condition? Our victory condition is we must control Upper Arkansas and have a Rancheria in a second territory. To control Upper Arkansas, we have to remove the 2 tribes that are there. So I hope you're understanding that from a victory perspective, this card is very valuable, especially combined with this one in terms of giving us, moving us towards victory. So that's why I was contemplating taking the Warfare card. But I didn't. I took the trade one because I'm a peacenik at heart. The other one, War and Subjugate instructions have no effect. So this is actually quite awesome for us. Remember, instructions are, it's enemy instructions. So when we come over here, if there's a war, like you see here, and then there's another one called Subjugate, they don't actually do anything. Well, here we go. There's Subjugate right there. Also, I didn't explain it during setup, but there's a side with a stripe through it. Make sure you use the side that does not have the stripe at the start of the game. Enemy spends the APs but does not actually execute the instructions, unless that procedure would cause the player to execute or recover. So this is because Spain is at war, so they're really being impacted by this, and they're not really paying a lot of attention to us. So 2 very nice cards, so we get a nice little cushion, at the start of the game. This one is a card we can acquire. Spend 1 AP to take it into hand. So we have to spend an action point to be able to take this card. And then we can play it to place a 3 strength band into any map space, or roll a die and see if we can remove a tribe just outright. So just boom, we can remove a tribe from the map. This is a little bit more gamble heavy, whereas this one's more guaranteed. This is a one-time use card. Okay, so one thing I'm uncertain, and you know what, the rule book does say it, I just don't remember. When can I do this? I think I can do this at any time. Spend the AP to take it into hand. I may have to check on that, because we do start the game with 1 AP. So 2 player aids that come with it, and we're going to start here, sequence of play, and the player aids are awesome. And as the designer promised, he was trying to put all the rules in the player aid, and I think he did. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the other player aid on the back explains all the counters. It's very well done, tells you what they all are, and then even tells you, you know, what a trade good is, and then what does it do if you have one. So all very good. So I took the trade thing that lets me get guns, okay? So we're able to get guns. That's the thing that I took. So during a success check, which we'll explain in a second, a band possessing guns counter may attempt to cancel enemy APs that are drawn. I can roll a die. If the result is greater than or equal to AP value, it goes back to the cup. Otherwise, the gun counter is spent. So it's a gamble thing. During a battle, a band possessing guns counter may spend 1 to roll 2 dice and select the highest roll. So I like guns. I'm from America. It's all good, baby. All right. So, and then the rest we can talk about later. Okay, so let's just dive in and give her a rip. Okay, first thing we do is what's called a war column phase. So let me see if I can get out my pointer here. This war column phase, step 1, says right here, if no war column, terminate this procedure. So there is no war column. What is a war column? I'll show you. A war column is something like this. So that would be, so this is a war column from the north, right? So this is a tribe war column with a strength 3. That is what that is. And this is one for Mexico. Strength 6-1 from Mexico. That's a war column. None of those are in the game at the moment. So we're going to skip step 1 for now. This is a very involved step, by the way, when we do it. And you can see here that there's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes quite a bit. So we're skipping this entire procedure. So we go down to 3.2 now. Okay, 3.2. And again, they do a nice, rule reference. If no bands in play, or if operation counter is in the must do passage of time space, the player must conduct passage of time. Otherwise, player selects take actions, culture, planning, or passage of time. All right, so we can actually force a passage of time, but only if it's in a numbered space. So let's get that out of the way, because that's going to come up several times. He likes this mechanic. These little markers move down, and you can see that space 1, 2, and 3 don't have any numbers on them. And then it has a 3, 4, and 5. So the way that works is as they move down, we're going to do a die roll. And if we roll, it's either less than 3 or more than 3, I can't remember which it is, then it's going to trigger the end of the round or a passage of time or whatever. So you can see as it goes up, it has to be less than because it's going up. So at first, when it's on the 3, you're going to have 50-50 chance that it's going to end, but then it's going to go to the 4, and then it's going to go to the 5, and the only way it doesn't end is if somebody rolls a 6, right? And then eventually it goes to on the 6th space here, it just says must do passage of time, and they could have just as easily put a 6 there because you can't roll higher than a 6. So that's the idea, and so what that's saying is that we have to be right now that little, the cream-colored operations token there is representing where we're at in terms of the game phase. And so that cream-colored operations would have to be in the 3, 4, or 5 space in order for us to manually trigger a passage of time. And I know it's probably way more explanation than you needed, but that's what that means. So this is out, and we don't want to do that anyways. That's bullcrap. All right, so next thing we can do is we can take actions, we can culture, and we can plan. How do I want to describe these? This has a million steps to it, take actions. This has a million steps. This one's real easy. So we'll just start there, right, and explain that. When we open this up, it'll tell us, for example, if we're doing a passage of time, you can see, look, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, blah, 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 and then it keeps going, ding, 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 ding. So there's a lot of steps here. And then for planning, you have step 1, step 2, step 3, blah, 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 and that's pretty big as well. And then you have take actions, which isn't quite as big, and then culture is just, boom, 2 steps, and it's a very easy math check. So I think we're going to do actions at first, and that's exactly what the designer did in his playbook, and there's no harm in it. It's actually a really good thing to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to take actions, which means we're going to jump inside the player aid and do the action steps. And then once we're done with the action steps, we come back to this and finish the rest of our turn. Because remember, this is a sequence of play. So the sequence of play, we're going through, we're on 3.3, we're going to go to another section, resolve all that, and then come back, and then we resolve the rest of this. And that's it. I mean, you just follow this every single round until the game ends. It's not bad. Okay, so let's get into our actions. And in this, by the way, the second player aid here is the enemy instructions. So we're going to get to that when the enemy takes their turn. So I'm going to put that aside, and let's put this down and go to the actions phase. And what's brilliant is I feel very queasy about my understanding of the rules, but this player aid is so good. When I was going through the playbook with the designer steps, I was able to figure out what to do next without the designer actually telling me in the playbook, and I thought that was a good sign. So my apologies if I screw this game up, but I think we can do this. All right, so, and I like showing people how easy or hard a game is to play your very first time, and I like letting you guys see me react to it for the very first time. So anyways, let's go. Take actions. Step 1, we have to choose a Rancheria to activate, okay? So very clear rule. It's easy for us now. We only have one Rancheria active. It's this one. All the other ones don't even exist. So we're going to select Rancheria A. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to activate A. Flip all bands and activate a Rancheria to unfinished. They're already unfinished, but later in the game they could not be. So that's an important step. Place bands from the resource box into empty spaces to immediate left of Paraibo's counter on the active Rancheria's medicine track. Place as many as possible. If there's no Rancheria in play or no bands, go to step 4. Okay, well, we don't want that scenario. That's a very bad scenario if there was nothing. So let me set the camera down here and show you what it's explaining. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to select what bands do we want to activate. The bands, the term bands is armies. So if you want to think of it that way. So these are our armies, if you will, but they're called bands. And what it's saying is you're just basically laying them here to the left of your Paraibo, which is this blue token. And if you ever have any doubts, on the other side it says Paraibo. In fact, we can even say Paraibo there in case that helps you. All right, so what that means, what does it mean? Well, his strength level is 2, so he does not have the coordination or the elderly wisdom to manage 3 bands. So even though we have 3 available to us, we're only able to put 2 in the game right now. And so that's partially what it means. And you're going to see we're going to be able to do something different with each one of these. And then we could even do some shenanigans where we don't even do anything with this guy, but instead we gain action points. There's a lot of variability in this game. Like I said, it's like a State of Siege game, but there's a lot of choices, like way more choices than I think a State of Siege game gives you. So Anyways, that's all the step is telling us to do right now, is to line them up like this. And so we have 2 of them here, and then let's find out what we can do with them next. All right, so activate the rightmost band from the medicine track. So that just means, so Paraibo's here, activate the one that's right next to him. And conduct actions with the active band. You must activate at least one, okay? And what that means is, because we have 2 of them there, right? So we could activate one and then do something different with the other. What is that something different? Well, if bands remain on the medicine track, we repeat this step or we go to step 3. So we can collect APs. If the number of empty spaces to the left of the band, we can return that band to its resource box and then mark it as finished and then collect action points, okay? Now, how does that work? I'm gonna show, dang it, I ended up knocking over my stacks because of the camera. And then I realized these need to go in the cup. Give me a second. Oh, where are you? Okay, so I made a big mistake there, knocking stuff over. All right, so let me show you what that, so remember, so here's the thing. We have to take an action with this guy, no matter what. It says that minimum you have to do actions with one guy. But let's say, I'm gonna just use this Comancheria up here. Let's say that we had a Paraibo that had a 5 strength, and we had 3 bands, just like we do now. So what you would do is you would line up the 3 bands like this. And then you'd have these 2 empty spaces. So no matter what, we have to take an action with that guy, okay? Then let's say we also take an action with that guy. What that step 3 is saying is that I could choose not to take an action with him, and he would still go into a finished state, right? We'd put him back into here finished, but since he had 2 empty spaces to the left of him, we get +2 action points. That's what that's saying. So you get more powerful if your medicine man, your Paraibo, is further up on this track, because now you can start getting free action points. And action points are different than actions. And I remember I told you, you got to throw away your understanding of what an action point is. I wish he would have used a different term, to be quite honest. But that's one of the tricks you can do. But it's really, in our situation, we're going to do an action with this guy. And even if I tried to get action points with him, there's no empty spaces here. So it's worthless to us. So we're probably going to just do 2 sets of actions. But I wanted you to understand that that's one of the options available to us. And we need to make sure we have a strong understanding of that, because later in the game, we might be able to manipulate the game mechanics to our favor there. And that's something we have to bear in mind. It's a nice way to get action points. Okay, so back to this. We can also activate a band that was not in the reservation, okay, by spending APs equal to the band strength. So remember, there's where the AP points can be used. And then we mark it as unfinished and then conduct the actions, and then it would be finished. So what does that mean? Well, that means, remember, this guy couldn't come out and play, right? Because we were full up. And we picked everybody for our kickball team, and this was that, board game guy who never gets picked. So he's there, and we're gonna, we feel sorry for him because he never gets to play. He always can't catch, and he can't even kick the giant kickball that rolls towards him. He somehow swings and misses with his foot, and then he falls down and embarrasses himself. But it's okay. We still want him to play. Well, if we're willing to, we can spend 2 action points because his strength is 2, and we can still use him even though there was no room for him on the kickball team, okay? We can have him hold our scoreboard for us or something. All right, so that's what that means. Now, I'm getting way ahead of myself. We're still here on step 2 where we have to do actions, okay? What this is saying is that we repeat this as often as we want, this step 2. But then these are the other 2 things we could do with them, and I just explained those to you. And then we repeat everything until there's either no APs left or we decline to spend APs, And then we'll do that last. So let's go through our actions now. So we got our first guy there. And here's our actions. It's on the first page. And we can do several things. We can hunt. We can move. We can raid. And we can trade. Okay? Trade, we're not going to be able to do right now. Because we need something to trade. We have nothing to trade. Maybe we can trade a horse. I don't know. I don't remember that. But we don't want to trade our horses. So that's one of the things we can do later, but we're not going to do now. Raiding actually is a awesome option. It's a pretty nifty thing the way he designed this game. Obviously, in order to raid, we would have to move. And so how do we know what we can or can't do? Well, we can do anything as long as we have the resources to do it. So first thing we do is we look at our little dude here, and you can see he has a 5. So come over here, and I'm going to take my movement points and put it on 5. So I know that the bands are here, but because these are permanent, things, I don't want to bump them. I just move along the side like this. So we're on 5 movement points. Okay, so the first thing we can do is hunt. So it costs 2 movement points if the band possesses Mahi Mahi. Otherwise, it's 3. And the target space must contain a bison counter. And we just take possession of the bison counter. So it's pretty straightforward. If we move, it's 1 movement space for the band plus the horse. So, otherwise it's 2 movement points per space. So if you don't have a horse, you're spending a lot more movement points to move 1 space. So it's just it's a move. That's it. And it's just saying that you can move along dashed lines, etc. And then the raid costs 1 movement point. You have to be on an enemy space or even a peace space. I don't know what happens if it's a peace space. That sounds dangerous. And then there's 4 steps. You do what's called a success check. For each success drawn, you collect a horse or captive from stock. If at least here we go. If the target's a peace space, we have to roll a die, and it's possible you could lose the peace, I think. Yes, you could no longer be at peace because you're raiding your allies, basically. Okay. So let's look at the map now and decide what we want to do. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Jeff, why do we want the bison? What do they do for us? Good question. Well, I'm going to just read it to you instead of showing you. But the bison is worth 1 population point. And it's used to strengthen your bands, which is your armies, during the passage of time. Or you can trade it for other resources, which is the trade action we were talking about that we can't do right now. Those are the 2 primary things it does. And you can see right on the bison, it's got the little number 1. That represents 1 population point. So, okay, so what did the designer do in the playthrough? Well, he hunted, and then in the trade action, he can trade it for a food, which is worth 2 population points. 2 is better than 1. So you actually want the food instead of the bison. But the bisons help to get there, right? They give you the points you need to do the magic. But that's during passage of time. So they don't give you immediate benefit. It's for later in the game. But it is definitely something that he did, and it was very effective. So I can tell you that he hunted a bison and he raided. He did both. So let's figure this out. If we do, so we're going to take our guy here with 5 movement points, and we're going to load up a horse with him, right? So you might be wondering, okay, where did you get that from? I got it from here. Remember, we have 4 horses in our resource pool. Okay, so I'm taking one of the 4 horses with me. And so this particular guy is going to take a horse. So now it's only going to cost us 1 movement point. And we start here where our ranchero is. Okay? And I know it's Rancheria. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Sorry. I order a lot of rancheros at a local burrito place. It's going to happen. Okay. So it'll cost us 1 movement point to go here. No matter what we do, it's going to cost us 1. Okay? Whether we're raiding or hunting. So I come over here, and we're down to 4 movement points. Now, the thing I haven't decided yet is, am I taking the Maharaja with us? So I'm going to find as many ways to pronounce this name as possible. We're going to take Bob with us. You know, are we taking Bob or not? That's the question. If we take Bob with us, he helps us to capture those bison for less movement points. That could be good, but he also helps us if we do raids. So that could also be good. So I'm going to check real quick. The hunt would be 2 movement points if we had him. So that would put us down to 2 left. And we could move 1 more space and then raid them, but then we would be out of movement points and would be on an enemy space at the end of the turn, which I can't remember what that does to us, but it's not good to be on an enemy space at the end of the turn. So I don't think that's what we want. So I'm not going to take Bob with us. We're going to just go there for 1 movement, and then we're going to hunt for 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to go back home for 1. So so I went there, I came, I saw, and I conquered. All right, so we got the bison, and we brought it home. So our little band of Ojibwe is back home. That's the Indian tribes here in Minnesota, the band of Ojibwe. They own all the casinos. So they're very rich. They also get to break all of our fishing laws and use like nets that aren't environmentally friendly. It creates all kinds of controversy. It's pretty interesting to learn about. I think, you know, in some respects, with everything that happened to them, let them put the nets into the water. But anyways, here we go. So they're back. And then what you do is you put this on a finished state, like that. And he stays finished with the resources underneath him, okay? Those resources, they're at the rancheria, but they're not like available in the rancheria yet. And here's why you do that. Because now I'm going to be activating the next guy, and he can't use, let's say I only had 1 horse. Well, that horse is tied up with him. So when I activate the next guy, I have to use the resources that are not the ones he brought back. I also can't, you know, because I could do a trade action to trade that bison, right? That would be really cool. Well, I'm not going to be able to trade that bison yet because that bison's not back yet. It's not released. So that's the reason why you want to keep everything in its own stack until the game tells you to release it. All right, so now we're going to activate this guy, and we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to get a horse for him, but we're also going to take Bob. Bob's coming with us. So Bob is coming out, and we're going to do a very similar thing. And we have 5 movement points. I almost said magic points. We have 5 movement points. And we're going to move 1, 2 spaces, right? So that puts us down to 3. And then we're going to raid, which will move us down to 2. And then we're going to return home, which will take the last 2, okay? So it's pretty elegant. I think the designer really planned that out to be that way. This is probably the first opening move that I think everybody's going to do. I'd be interested to hear if anybody has a different opening move that they do. But this is a very classic one, I think, and it's what the playbook actually did. But let's go through it. What does a raid do? All right, so the target space must be an enemy space. So what is an enemy space? It's anywhere that has a settlement or a tribe belonging to north, south, east, or west. Okay, obviously it could also be a peace space, and a peace space, by the way, is a space that has north, south, east, or west. It's just that we're at peace with them. So they're both, you need a settlement, or in this case, a tribe. And that's exactly what we have here. Space number 4 there, and if you can see space number 5, they both have tribes. Okay, so we have to conduct a success check, and that's 2.9. And this is what's brilliant. It's right here. We don't even have to open up the rulebook. Okay, So the success check has 4 steps. Before we come back, it's a very algorithmic game. So we're on GoSub 2.9. Okay, GoSub 2.9. That brings, I'm dating myself on my programming skills here. Step 1. Determine the number of counters to be drawn from the success draw cup. The draw counter is equal to the band's strength. So our strength is 2. Okay. If conducting an action and the active band possesses a bob, roll a die. That's why we brought Bob. Okay. So if the die roll is less than or equal to his medicine value, so this is why his medicine value is important. His medicine value is only 2. So there's a good chance we're not going to roll less than a 2. Plus 1 bonus counter. If the die roll is half of his medicine, we get plus 2 bonus counters, which is awesome. But the only way that's going to happen is we roll 1. But let's see what we get. We need a low number. Low number, low number. Big whammies. Stop. All right, I rolled a 4. That's crap. So Bob didn't do anything for us. All right, so we're going to get to draw 2 success counters from the cup. So we draw a number of counters, which is going to be 2. So let's do that. All right, 1, 2. I drew 2 successes. There's a lot of other stuff in here, by the way. There's these. It's an interesting game mechanic. So let's say I draw this. First of all, it's not a success. And secondly, this is going to add action points to the enemy on his turn. So we could actually be fueling the enemy on his turn by drawing poorly. And what you're going to see is that these are going to actually be withheld from the cup for a period of time, and they don't go back in the cup. So the more and more successes I draw, the more and more the chances are we're going to draw enemy actions. So it's a pretty interesting mechanic. Okay, so if the acting band possesses a Maharaja, place all success counters on his medicine track. This is important. This is why we brought Bob. So even though Bob failed us here and we didn't get extra tokens, we're able to put it on Bob's track. Otherwise, it would all go out of play. Eventually, the stuff on Bob's track also goes out of play. Don't get me wrong. They all end up out of play. But being on Bob's track is huge. That gives us another bonus and a different action later in the game that this one doesn't give us. So you want Bob with you if you're raiding, or at least try to have Bob with you. So what about Bob? Well, he didn't help us there, but he's definitely helping us here. So we got 2 successes. And what they mean by putting it on his track is we come over here to where he is, and they go right there. They don't need to be side by side. You can stack them, whatever you need to do, but they're going on his little track there. And that's why it says the word success. All right, so place all non-success counters into the enemy AP box, and if an instruction counter is drawn, resolve it now per blah, blah, blah. Okay, an instruction counter is one of these things. That thing. That's an instruction counter, okay? So it's going to have a little letter and then some action. So there's some mechanic in the game that's going to put these in a cup. None of those are in the cup right now, so we're not going to be experiencing this anytime soon. Okay, so we did the success check. So let's go back up. For each success drawn, collect 1 horse or 1 captive from stock. Raiding band takes possession. Okay, so remember I put the horses in their own cup because there's just so many of them, but these horses are all here in the available resources. Okay, a captive is worth a population point, just like a bison is. So we can integrate them into our population. The captives also do other strange things. I'm turning over the sheet here. So we can trade them for resources. It doesn't cost an AP to trade captives in an enemy space. So we don't have to spend an action point to do that. So we can go to an enemy and trade the captives back to the enemy, right? And get resources for it. And I guess that's all we could do. I thought captives also helped with battles. I could be wrong, but I would swear I read somewhere where if you're in a battle and you have captives, you can actually spend less military points to do the battle or something. I'll check. But that's what these captives do. So, you know, with 2 successes, we can grab another horse. So we're basically stealing horses from them. And we can grab a captive. Or we can do 2 captives or whatever. I honestly don't know what the right strategy is. We seem to have plenty of horses right now. Horses don't necessarily die, but you can trade them for other resources. So they're just as good as captives for trading purposes. So I'm going to just grab one of each because I'm not smart enough to know better anyways. So we're going to do that. And remember, we had enough movement points to move back home. So here we're moving back home. And so I'm going to go ahead and move the camera this way. And so our little band of Ojibwe with Bob now has a second set of horses and captives, and they're all in their little pile. And he is, whoops, I dropped Bob. And he is now finished. Okay, so we put him here, and right now, Rancherio 1, or A, has 2 finished bands and 1 active band. Okay. All right. So, if at least 1 success was drawn, place a ravage counter. So we're going to ravage that particular tribe. Now remember, our objective for the game is we need to get rid of both of those tribes so we can have control of the region. And the way you can get rid of them, or at least one of the ways, is if there are 3 or more ravage counters on a tribe, we get to remove it from play. So that's one of the ways. So we just put 1 ravage on. So we would have to rate it again and again, but we could get there. If the target space is peace, it's not, so we're going to skip all that. So there you go. We just did our action phase. 36 minutes in, that's not too bad. Okay, so we come here to Operation Cleanup. So we have to enforce stacking rules. So bands in Rancheria may relinquish possession of resource or bob counters. Transfer all resource counters on the operations track. Return all success counters from same space as operations counter to draw cup. All right, so all it's saying is we can now claim our resources. So we have a bison. These guys are still finished. You don't mark them as unfinished yet. Bob comes back out. We have our horses now. We have 5 of them, and we have a captive, and we have a bison. So that's our situation at the moment. That's what it's saying we can do. Okay, if we were still out on the range, right? We didn't make it back home. We would stay out there with our resources. So our band would be finished and it would just stay on whatever space it's on. It would not, it only returns the resources if we're back at the Rancheria. Now the stacking rules aren't listed here. This is probably one of the few things that aren't listed here, but it's pretty simple. It's just, we can't have a Rancheria in the same space as a tribe or an enemy settlement. Okay. So now we're to here. Roll a die for each Rancheria with finished bands. We have 2 finished bands. If the die roll number is less than or equal to the number of finished bands, the enemy gets to execute a free instruction. That's bad. We don't want that. So we have 2 finished bands. Oh gosh, I rolled a 1. So they're going to get to execute 1 free instruction. So first thing we do is we roll the die. It's a 5. And you might be wondering, okay, well, hold on, Jeff. You said that all the rules are in the thing. Well, we can go here. Oh. One of these procedures, what's operation step are we on? We're on operation step 3.4. We're on step 2 of the cleanup phase, right here. During step 2 of Operation Cleanup. Okay, so we're rolling a die. That's what I just did. I actually memorized this part. This part of the rules I actually understand. But here we go. We'll go through the steps so you can see them. We're rolling a die and we're comparing it to the enemy action table of the history card. So I rolled a 5, and the enemy action table is this thing. So on your history card, you have this little table at the top. The 5 is the west. So the Spanish of the west are activating. The north and the south, nothing happens, okay? So we're gonna activate the west. So now we're gonna roll a die again. And you see I got a 3. And what we do is, this is just a mechanical step. It doesn't have any immediate in-game effect, but it will impact the game, and you'll see why later. So what we do is you go 1, 2, 3. You can see everything's got a number. So you go to 3 and west. You just line it up, and this settle command gets flipped to whatever's on the other side. Now it's war. If it was war, it would have been flipped to settle. Okay, so it's basically a command got changed. So these, by the way, are telling you what commands they're going to execute, because they always execute from the top down. So this flipping thing is maybe you were expecting them to settle. Now all of a sudden the game's going, au contraire, mon frère. It's going, ni hao, bow wow. So that's being flipped. Okay. All right. Then we execute the topmost instruction of the active enemy for free. Okay. Now, what does for free mean? Well, this instruction here, subjugate, normally costs 3 action points. And the enemy doesn't have any action points. And so normally it wouldn't be able to execute it. But this is a free instruction because I rolled badly. So they're going to do the subjugate action. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to move that over here to the inactive step. So that's what they're going to do. So now we got to do the subjugate. Well, what is subjugate? Well, good question. Always ask good questions. So subjugate is on the back of our other player aid. Enemy instructions. Subjugate. Step 1. If there is 1 or more ravage counters in enemy space belonging to the active enemy, execute a recover, which means basically that the ravage counters get removed. Remember, this is the west, and we attacked a tribe, which is the north. The west has no ravage counters anywhere, so nothing happens. But also understand, this card is in effect. The war and subjugate instructions have no effect. So I'm going to read for you what subjugate does, but nothing's happening because of this card. All right, so then we would select a tribe counter to target, and then what they would do is they would pick a tribe counter nearest to one of their enemy spaces. And just so you understand, the Spanish have no spaces anywhere on the board except for here. So they would pick the nearest tribe, which actually there's 2 choices here. And they both have a yellow line, so they can go to either one. So we'd probably do some kind of random thing to figure out which of the 2 they go after, and so forth. And then basically they're going to subjugate them, which means that they put a settlement there. And I think their tribe gets destroyed. And we can go through this in more detail whenever it actually happens. But just helping you understand, this is how the enemy and the AI does things. It's a very slick little system that he worked out. And this reminds me a little bit of Spirit Island with the way the instructions move around, and you get to see ahead of time what the next ones are going to be. But you have no idea if it's going to be west, north, or east. You just know what the next command is going to be based on each one. All right, so going back to our steps. We just finished step 2. Now we move to step 3. Draw and reveal 1 counter from the success check draw cup. If it's a success, it just goes back, nothing happens. If it's an instruction, we resolve it. It won't be because there's no instructions in the cup. If it's an enemy AP counter, it goes into the AP box. Then, unless the 0 enemy APs, they get to take their turn, right? Right now, they're at 0, folks. So let's see how well we do. The playbook had them like at 10 APs, because obviously the designer is trying to explain all the different things that could happen. We're doing much better than the playbook, of course. Let's see. Success. So it just goes back in the cup, and so the enemy's not actually taking a turn. Now, one thing I forgot to show you is when that moved over to inactive, these all bump up. like this, and then this comes in at the bottom. And if there was like 3 of them here, they would come in with the third one would be first, second, and then first. If Santa Fe Trail has been revealed, nope. Card number 43, we would put little question marks on the map. And you're going to see this, like there's going to be a lot of them that say, if you're on a space with a question mark, do this. We're probably not going to encounter that for a little while, but there's a lot of places in the rules that explain that. And it says if the enemy and structured counter was drawn, well, this is all Santa Fe stuff, never mind. We just finished a whole turn. Now, there should be more. Why am I not saying more? Because there's like a cleanup step we're supposed to do. Why am I missing that? Well, this is the cleanup step. Never mind. Something is supposed to move the... Oh, let's see. Okay, so here's why I'm being hung up. Something is supposed to move this operations counter down. Something moves it down. That's how the game progresses. We don't get unlimited actions, folks. So I'm trying to figure out where did I miss that. I'm pretty sure that was supposed to move down. Maybe it moves down somewhere else? Did I miss it? Oh crap, I missed it here. I way back, way back. Yeah. Sorry folks. So when we were doing our take action step, this is before we drew and did all the other stuff. Remember there was still a step 5, we skipped that. So we're supposed to roll a die. If it's less than or equal to the position on the operations counter, we move the operations counter to passage of time. Otherwise, it moves 1 space forward. That's where it's supposed to happen. So this would have happened actually quite a few steps ago. But at the end of our action, so after we took the bison and after we raided, but before we did all that other stuff, including the free instruction that the enemy did, this operations counter would have moved down. So, okay, I feel much better now. All right, so now we rinse and repeat. We go back to the start. So I'm going to go ahead and get a drink from all that talking. I hope this was a great first turn for you guys and was able to explain everything that's happening. We're going to now rinse and repeat, and you're going to just see possibly some different types of actions and things like that that are going to happen now. And you're going to start to see how all the different mechanics are going to start to meld together. Like I said, it's a very interesting game. Am I having fun? It's a little too early to say, but I'm definitely not hating it. And the rules and the playbook playthrough had me very curious. Like I would describe my position right now as I have just encountered an interesting puzzle. This is like the first time anyone's ever shown me a Sudoku puzzle. Like back when I didn't even know what Sudoku was. And then, they're showing it to you and you're like, huh. And then you have that urge where you can't wait until they stop showing it to you so you can try it yourself. That's how I feel about this game right now. There's this puzzle that has been laid out before me and I'm just itching to try it. And maybe I'll try it and realize, oh gosh, that's way too much math for me, or that's way too much whatever. But where I'm at right now is I definitely have the itch to try it. And this particular designer has impressed me in many ways. I want to say that, first of all, like with his approach of having all the rules in the player aid, fantastic. Again, 2 thumbs up and more toes. He's got like this, like, I don't know, this brilliant little way things shift around. It's going to become more apparent, like this shifting around really impacts the game in really bizarre ways. And it's just a wonderful, there's a little bit of randomness. Like, because like a lot of people, the way they control AIs is it's always through cards, right? You have to shuffle, 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 draw a card, and then go through 20 steps. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not going through 20 steps. I mean, look at this. There's a lot of procedural steps here. But the way this thing manipulates, it's almost like a Mancala board. It's just, you know, it changes the AI's behavior without you having to do so much card management and lookup tables and charts. That's the part I think that I'm finding most fascinating about it, is he found a way to make the AI elegant. I mean, dare I say it, this is far more elegant than Conflict of Heroes. But here's the thing. Conflict of Heroes needs to react to what you're doing. This doesn't necessarily react to what we're doing as cleanly. They're just doing things. And of course, everything they do ruins our day. But anyways, I'm stopping, getting my drink, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks for watching. Stay awesome.